it's important to dial these things in because I've never had so much clarity in my life as to where I am in relation to my goals. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bello, and in this episode/video, we're going to be talking about what gets measured gets managed. I just made a reel on this. I just talked about this on my story the other day, and so boom, I figured I'd make a whole length episode on this. And I believe that Peter Drucker is attributed for saying this quote, what gets measured gets managed. And basically what that means is if you are not taking the time to measure something, how are you going to improve at it? How are you going to get better? If you're not tracking how many calories you eat, I'm just pushing my cat out of the way. You're just trying to get up here on my standing desk. But if you're trying to get better at working out or exercising, you've got to really dial in everything. What are your workouts? How much weight are you lifting? You see people kind of with that little log when they're going and working out. Same thing with food. You can use apps like MyFitnessPal that I haven't used it in a while, honestly, because I've been eating clean from a meal prep place, but you can track and see how many calories am I eating? What are my macros? How much fat am I eating a day? How much protein? How many carbs, right? If you're not tracking things, you have no visibility into how you're doing. And of course, you're not going to be able to understand where you are in relation to your goals. So it is great to talk about goals and to set big goals. We've talked about goal setting before on this show, but once you have your goals, how far are you right now? Are you actually tracking the day-to-day stuff? So if I open up, I have a little dashboard that I use and I track all kinds of stuff from how many times I meditate a day to how many times I exercise per week, to even how many podcast episodes I'm doing per week, either solo or interviews. And so it built up to this crazy thing. I have this big spreadsheet, but create something that works for you. It can be a single sheet on an Excel spreadsheet, or it can be 10 different things like I kind of have where I'm tracking everything. So if I look at my self-development tab, I literally am tracking how many times am I doing a morning routine? How many times am I meditating per day? I usually shoot for 2. How many times am I exercising per week? My goal is to work out 4 or 5 times a week, which I've been doing very well. So today I worked out legs and shoulders, for example. I'm also tracking how many pages I'm reading. So I read the book, if you're watching the video, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And in my spreadsheet, I show that I read from page 303 to 314. So I read 12 pages today. Now, if I look over at the critical tasks, the things that I feel are very mission critical and important for my business, that's content creation, that's connecting with people. So if I look at today, I did 2 podcast interviews. I interviewed 2 people, and I also did a self-development call in the morning on a project that I'm working with a friend on. I also made a social media post. I'm literally tracking this stuff. I can show you any day of the year, the activities that I did. That's how specific I've gotten. That is how I am measuring stuff. And what gets measured gets managed. That's going to be the title of this episode, most likely. So I did a social media post, and I even did a solo podcast episode. That's what I'm recording right now. And so I use this scorecard system. I've talked about it before, and it really helps me to just keep track of the activities that I'm doing, how many points I'm assigning to various activities. So for example, an interview, I'm interacting with someone, I give myself 2 points for, whereas the solo episode, I'm not necessarily engaging with people, but it is an important step in making sure I have content to share with my audience in a few weeks whenever this goes live. This is worth 1 point on my scorecard. And my goal is to get 5 points daily, 25 points per week. And then anything I do on the weekends is bonus. So I'm literally tracking, like for those listening, I went through a few things. I'm tracking what activities am I doing on a daily basis? How many podcasts am I recording per week, either interview format or solo? How many times am I meditating per day? How many times am I working out per week? And I've got all my goals and everything, the amount of real estate deals I want to close, the amount of commission I want to make, where I stand against those goals. And so I can tell if I'm falling short, if I'm looking like I'm on track. And again, I really want to talk about how it's important to dial these things in because I've never had so much clarity in my life as to where I am in relation to my goals. Some of the other things that I'm actually tracking and paying attention to very closely include my net worth. I've got so many pieces of data, and I've actually gotten even more clear because before, I'm just looking back. So I started tracking it in January of 2020. Before, I didn't really have any idea. I kind of knew various bank account balances or credit card amounts and what was in my retirement account. But from January to August, I wasn't even tracking. I had like a total of all my savings and checking in one bucket, but I've since split that out. So in September, I literally have split it out to various accounts, like, Wealthfront might be one, and then like Vanguard might be another. And then I even added a bucket for crypto because I've gotten into a little bit of crypto stuff. I haven't really dug into a whole lot of cryptocurrency. I don't really honestly understand it a whole lot, but I've got some money that I'm willing to invest and potentially risk. And so I'm just going to put it in there and leave it and see what happens. So I've split all those things up, and I've also got an investments tab where I can see my exact investments. So whereas Vanguard may have had a certain amount of investments in it, I've since split that up. As of September is when I got very, very clear, and I've broken it into buckets. Out of the Vanguard amount, how many is in VTIAX? How many is in VBTLX, right? What's my 401k amount? What's my pension amount? What's in the Wealthfront account? So by doing this and tracking this on a monthly basis, I've been updating it kind of manually on the first of every month, and it really doesn't take long. I know there's different tools. I have used a few of them, like Personal Capital, and I think Marcus by Goldman Sachs or something like that I've been using to track. It shows you your net worth. It shows something like that, but still I've got a certain view that I want. And I've also got charts that I can see the lines and the trends. And obviously you want to see your net worth going up, but realistically, sometimes it goes up and down and fluctuates based on investments that you're doing. Or maybe you had a high paying income and one month is slower than the next and your expenses are staying stagnant, or maybe your expenses rise depending on your marketing. So knowing exactly where you are is very helpful because I'm not necessarily guessing anymore. I can look back and see what's my net worth right now, how much liquid assets do I have? Like if I wanted to make an investment, what's my true liquid amount that I could just deploy right away, versus being like, hey, my net worth is this amount, but really 80% of it is locked away in assets that I can't really necessarily sell or liquidate and then put into something. And so these are all things that I'm figuring out. I'm not a professional investor. I guess a few people are, but like I'm learning, I'm growing, and most importantly, I am tracking, where now that I'm tracking this stuff, I'm paying way more attention to it than when I didn't know what the numbers were. And so what are those things in your life that you have no idea? You've stuck your head in the sand, you're not paying attention, you're kind of like YOLO, I'll figure it out later type of thing. Really get clear on that. A few more things that I'm tracking just in case it gives you any inspiration. I have since created a tab with like my insurance information on like my car insurance and my health insurance and my policy numbers and the contact website and phone numbers for those things. And so I'm thinking like for any of those insurance things or things that like family members may need to know if something happened to me or if I were killed or whatever, like I want to have all that stuff in one spot. Maybe I'm thinking a Dropbox folder and I can share that link with my family, with my fiance. So if anything ever happens, like Chris is gone link, like that's going to be the link if something happens or I get like lost in the mountains somewhere one day and then they find my bones, I'm sorry, I joke about a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't. My mom always hates it, but like still, my fiance has been making me listen to some Crime Junkie lately, and apparently a lot of people go missing on hikes. I wouldn't have known. I'm just clueless with my headphones, but they'll probably make a podcast about me if that ever happens. That's the level of detail I'm going to, because I've seen so many people. I've heard stories of people who are not prepared. Something happens. They go missing on this hike. Their bones get found. No one knows about their will or their documents, or like, how do they cover the funeral expenses? They got to create a GoFundMe because like no one knows like what the steps are, right? I just want to be extremely prepared. I want to know where everything is. I want to be extremely organized. And most importantly, I've got my goals. I know where I want to go. So that's great. That's step one. But step two really is knowing where you are now in relation to those goals. And yeah, if you want to make 6 figures a year and you're like, hey, I've only made like 50 grand this year, you're far from that goal. But I want you to get so freaking crystal clear that if I ask you where you are in relation to that goal, you pull up that spreadsheet, you can tell me how much you made to the penny, like in real time, realistically right now. If I asked you that, would you be able to do that? If I asked you how much money has your business brought in, could you go in and tell me we've made $110,000 and 500, or I guess $110,450 and 20 cents, like get that detailed. If you can't do that, or it would take you a while to do it, you're being more reactive instead of proactive. And I really highly recommend that you are more proactive. That way you can see things in real time. You can see how you're pacing. Are you going to hit your goals or are you not? Do you need to pick up the pace right now in order to hit those goals by the end of the year? Or are you on track, right? I don't want you to get to December, the end of the year, and say, well, we missed our goal again. I want you to know today, if you are doing the amount of work that you're doing, the amount of effort you're putting in, are you going to hit those goals? Yes or no? You should be able to know that. And I'm not here scolding you, because if you asked me a year or two ago, I didn't have any of this stuff. I was shooting from the hip. I tend to like to do that. And so I had to create these systems for myself, because shooting from the hip is not good. You don't know where you are. You don't know where you're going, and you're not sure what's really working. You're just trying a whole bunch of crap, right? You're throwing stuff against the wall and you're seeing what sticks. But even if something sticks, sometimes you don't even realize what sticks because you're not tracking it, and then you're on to the next thing, right? Shiny object syndrome. So that's my advice for today. Make sure to actually track what it is that's important. Whatever area you want to improve, you have to start measuring. Put metrics in place, have key performance indicators or KPIs for team members, or make sure that you are measuring what it is that you want to manage, right? If you want to improve something, you've got to know your numbers. If it's not that important to you, maybe you don't have to know the numbers, but if it is something that you want to improve, you've got to know where you are right now. So remember, what gets measured gets managed. I know I said that 3 or 4 times, but that's the moral of today's story. So thanks once again for listening to the show. If you got value, make sure to share this with a friend. That's all I ask. That's the only fee that I ask. And I look forward to catching you on the next episode. Thanks so much. Talk soon.